What is up, weather enthusiasts? I'm your host, Pat's Path Predictor. Let's get right into the weather. Alright, so here's the situation we have for you, ladies and gentlemen. We have a lot to talk about today once again, as we have a subtropical storm moving through the Azores Islands. We have an area of interest that is continuing to show signs of development, which is now Invest 97L. Showing more and more signs of development coming up in the next 48 hours. And we have an area of interest that's going to help fuse with Invest 97L and give it all the moisture it needs for it to keep going in the long term. So once again, a lot to talk about today. So let's go ahead and dive right into it. Here's the cliff notes that we have for the NHC. We have subtropical storm Patty out here near the Azores Islands. Maximum sustained winds are currently at 65 miles per hour. Minimum central pressure is 982 millibars. Its current location is 38.2 degrees north, 31.1 degrees west, and it's currently moving southeast at 11 knots or 13 miles per hour. Currently, a lot of the Azores Islands are under tropical storm warnings right here. Let's go ahead and pull up the public advisory. All of the Azores Islands are under the tropical storm warning at this current point. Tropical storm force winds or winds of 40 miles per hour or greater extend outward up to 205 miles from the center. Right there. Gradual weakening is expected during the next few days. And Patty is expected to be a post-tropical low by Sunday night. But here's the situation that we have. Let's go ahead and pull up the discussion very quickly. Expected to weaken to 60, then 50, then 45, then 40, and then down to a remnant low as it continues to move to the east right now. Patty is likely near its peak intensity as it currently lies in a region of instability beneath its parent upper level low and in a relatively low vertical wind shear area. However, these models show the upper level feature weakening, resulting in a more stable environment and increasing shear as well. These environmental factors should cause steady weakening and lead to post-tropical transition by Sunday night. And if we go ahead and show you the graphics that we have pulled up here, let's go ahead and show you the cone right now. This is where it's at. A lot of the tropical storm force winds are mainly around the western and southwestern side especially, and this is expected to move through the Azores Islands and potentially be a threat for Portugal and Spain. The Iberian Peninsula is going to have to pay attention to this and watch this very closely, as this could bring some very big impacts like rain, some gusty winds, potential flash flooding is always an issue with this. So if you are from Portugal or Spain, especially Portugal and Galicia over here, watch this very closely. We're going to continue to keep you updated on that going forward. That's what we have going on with Patty. We're not going to take too much time with it right there, because there's not really that much to go over. It's just pretty simple case with this right here, where you have subtropical storm heading for islands and then Europe, and we're going to have to pay attention to it. We have two other areas of interest to watch, although this is going to potentially become one in the near future, as this area of interest is expected to merge with Invest 97L. A trough of low pressure just north of Puerto Rico and Hispaniola continues to produce disorganized showers and thunderstorms and gusty winds. Slow development of the system is possible during the next day or two while it moves westward near the Greater Antilles. By early next week, this system is forecast to be absorbed into the low pressure over the Caribbean Sea, regardless of development. Locally heavy rains are possible during the next couple of days across the northern Leeward Islands, Puerto Rico, Hispaniola, eastern Cuba, and the southeastern Bahamas. 10 and 10 for the probability of development right there. This looks like, at least for now, mainly a flash flooding threat to take a look at and pay attention to, but other than that, not really that much to go into. But this area of interest is what I am most concerned about. This is now is an 80% probability of development in the next 7 days, 70% in the next 48 hours, and this has been designated Invest 97L. A broad area of low pressure over the southwestern Caribbean Sea continues to produce disorganized showers and thunderstorms. Gradual development of the system is expected, and a tropical depression is likely to form within the next couple of days while it moves generally northward to northwestward over the central and western Caribbean Sea. Regardless of development, locally heavy rains are possible over portions of the adjacent land areas of the Western Caribbean, including Jamaica, Hispaniola, and Cuba. Interests in the Western Caribbean Sea should monitor the progress of the system. An Air Force Hurricane Hunter aircraft is scheduled to investigate the system on Sunday. That last part is really good news. Getting Hurricane Hunters out there to investigate this will give us more of an even better picture of what's going to happen, and it'll give model runs more data to run with this as we get the data for it to do that. 70% in the next 48 hours, 80% in the next 7 days. So this is almost a certainty that this is going to develop in the next little while, and we need to pay attention to this very closely. Let's go ahead and pull up Invest 97L on the current storms. Right here we go. It's currently maximum sustained winds are at 20 knots, pressure of 1,007 millibars. Current location is 11.7 degrees north, 79.9 degrees west, and we already have our first models out right here. Majority of the models have it around tropical storm to weak hurricane strength, but the general track of it is also pretty interesting, as well as we are starting to see signs that this is going to organize and develop in the Caribbean, and then make landfall on the western tip of Cuba and head towards Florida. So these are the early runs that we have right here with Invest 97L. With Patty, this is the general stuff that we're looking at. We kind of went over the majority of this. Track models have the system entering Portugal in the next few days. So if you're over there, you're going to want to watch this. Intensity runs, we don't need to go over them too much. They have a gradual weakening expected, and this is expected to transition into a remnant low. So overall, not too concerned with this, not too worried about what we're seeing with Patty. D7L is what I'm more concerned about, because this is going to impact more people regardless of its intensity, because this is going to bring some heavy flash flooding to Jamaica, heavy flash flooding potentially to Cuba, and it's in the long term, it is a threat for Florida. So we have a lot to pay attention to, and tens of millions of people are potentially going to get impacted by that. So let's go ahead and do the overall satellite analysis. We'll start with Subtropical Storm Patty right here. Subtropical Storm Patty definitely looking relatively organized, although it is starting to, although the structure is expected to start degrading in the next few hours. It is currently moving through the Azores Islands at a relatively quick rate, around 13 miles per hour. So if you're tuning in from the Azores, this is going to be a relatively fast-moving system. Yes, still prepare. Yes, you need to keep a very close eye on this. Stay inside if you need to. It's going to be heavy rains, heavy winds, especially on the back end of this, so you're going to want to pay close attention to that. But overall, the satellite structure, not bad for a subtropical system. It's kind of interesting. It's warm core enough for it to be designated as such, so you're going to want to pay attention to that. Also, Invest 97L, let's go ahead and take a look at that. As a matter of fact, I don't think a close-up gives it justice. Let's go ahead and go to the Western Atlantic to kind of get a more synoptic picture of it, because that, well, we had as a more mesoscale, and it doesn't really cover all the things I want to talk about. So already we have a few key observations I'm noticing with this. The first key observation is that rotation has started to get a little more pronounced on satellite around this system. That's the first thing I'm noticing. Second thing I'm noticing, more areas of convection are firing up. More of these convection areas are popping up more and more. Maybe it's popcorn convection. Maybe it's the start of something else happening. But and another thing I'm noticing, there's not very much wind shear where this area of interest is right now, or 97L is right, where 97L is rather. Ultimately, those are the three things I'm paying attention to, and I would not be surprised if maybe tonight we see a much more complex and much more organized structure than we did today, but we'll have to pay attention to that. And if we go ahead and show you water vapor imagery, okay, not that one, but the red, green, and blue. If we show you the water vapor imagery, look at all the moisture right now. It's a lot more moist where it is right now. There is a little bit of dry air coming into the Western Caribbean. That's mainly due to a trough of pushing through, but that's going to be cleaning itself up in the next 24 hours. And you also have this blob of convection going on. Definitely showing a lot of rotation, though. I am interested to take a look at it. There's a lot of rotation with that as it continues to move further and further to the west. We're going to have to pay close attention to that. But this is going to give the moisture infusion this system needs to organize and develop and move and could potentially strengthen in the long term. That's the moisture it's going to give. And we already don't have that much of an issue with moisture in itself because you have you have less dry air in the Caribbean. You have more moist air. You had a huge moisture infusion that's going to expected to continue over the next 48 hours, and we're going to have to pay close attention to that right here. True color imagery showing similar signs of it right here, similar signs of convection firing up, of more things starting to pop up. We're not 100% sure if this is going to be popcorn convection or if it's going to be other stuff, like maybe it's the start of something that gets a little bit more sustained. We're not 100% sure. These cells have started firing up. We can actually go to the mesoscale analysis right now for Invest 97L. We can actually go ahead and show you this. We've seen these cells fire up, I'd say, in the last couple of hours. Yes, there are some areas right here I'm paying attention to, especially these areas right here where the convection is. I'm noticing that those cells are starting to concentrate a bit more. It's more of instead of a single cellular area, more of a multicellular area, and if that continues to build up on itself, then we might have a much bigger problem down the road. But we'll have to pay attention to that as well. Also notice that in terms of the rotation, it has tightened up a little bit, not really that much, but it has a little bit. So progress is slowly but steadily being made with the system, and we are going to have to continue to watch it. Let's go ahead and show you some conditions that we're watching right now. Let's go ahead and start with the sea surface temperatures as of November 2nd. Sea surface temperatures that we're paying attention to. We're not going to focus for this section on subtropical storm Patty because we already kind of rehashed this in the last couple of videos. We're going to mainly focus on the Caribbean with this, but we are noticing in the Caribbean a lot of these areas, a lot of these water temperatures are really continuing to bubble up right now. We're still seeing the 29 to 30 degrees Celsius waters. I will say in the long term, as the system is going to be moving at a relatively slow pace for the next 3 days, and the more it develops, the more that water it takes out, and the more of a cold wake you're going to see the system generate. And especially considering it's this late in hurricane season, those waters are obviously not going to recover. So if we want to see some development, it's that helps in the long-term hurricane threat. And when I mean long-term, I mean 2025. You're going to want to see it now because that's going to cool the waters down even more, and it's going to help kind of suck up all those warm waters and just keep it tapped out. Because what we've noticed for this hurricane season is the Caribbean Sea still remains relatively warm, especially in the eastern half of the Caribbean Sea, but the Western Caribbean, unlike last year, has been tapped out quite a bit more than it was before. Yes, you're still seeing a lot of OHC over there, but if this system plays its cards right, it not only will it potentially intensify at a pretty quick rate, it'll also take out a lot of the conditions that we were noticing for the last 2 years with this hurricane season. So it's a bit of good, a bit of bad going on. It's not great that this is going to impact tens of millions of people, but it's also, at least in the long term, a little bit better that we see less OHC down the road. And in terms of where this convection is over Puerto Rico, it's going to continue moving to the west over 29 degrees Celsius waters. That convection is going to continue to sustain itself all the way until it merges with that low pressure system that invests over here in the Caribbean. And then from then on out, you have all the moisture, and then we're ready to go gangbusters with this. So that's what we have going on with the water temperatures. Ocean heat content continues to be very concerning with this because this system is going to be moving through 2 areas of high OHC instead of just one. And you're not just going to see the system move into the northwestern Caribbean. You're also going to start seeing the system moving into this area of the Caribbean Sea off the coast of Jamaica. And where that is it's right now the most concentrated area of OHC right now in the Atlantic Ocean and potentially even the world outside of the Pacific Ocean. But regardless of that, you're seeing this huge concentrated area of OHC. That is going to give a lot of fuel for convection, a lot of fuel for potential development, a lot of fuel for intensification, potentially if it develops quick enough. But regardless of that, if it moves through this area, starts going off right away, Jamaica, you're in the line of fire. And then if it makes landfall in Jamaica, land interaction will weaken it, which would absolutely be a worst case scenario for those who live on the island. primarily because this will make the impacts way, way worse. Now, granted, we don't know the exact intensity of this. The models have been fluctuating up and down, up and down, up and down, up and down. But what we can tell you is, at least for right now, we are seeing at least a strong tropical storm by the time it approaches Jamaica, and then it intensifies further as it goes towards Cuba. So we're going to have to pay close attention to that. In terms of the Cuban impacts, it's going to be entering this area of 150 plus OHC, then making landfall on the western tip of Cuba. And I do expect weakening based on sea surface temperatures alone by the time it gets up to Florida. The primary reason for it is the OHC is tapped out because the continental shelf, you have cooler sea surface temperatures near Florida, 25 degrees or below, and that's going to not be able, the system's not going to be able to sustain itself, especially if it's a hurricane with those temperatures, and it's going to weaken as it approaches Florida. You're also looking at potential wind shear as well, which we will get to right about now. Here's the wind shear threat that we're paying attention to. Yes, there is a concentrated area of wind shear in the Caribbean, but right now it's about 30 knots at most, and it's not really going to do that much in the long term. This wind shear is going to continue to move out of the area. We will have to watch it, and as soon as that wind shear fully moves out and we see more of that yellow and more of that green in the Caribbean Sea, this system is going to take off. You can count on that. And if you're in Jamaica, Cuba, and Florida, you're going to want to watch this very, very closely. You're also seeing wind shear decrease in the Dominican Republic, Puerto Rico, those areas right there. If those two areas of low wind shear, the area in the Eastern Pacific and the area isolated generally in the Greater Antilles merge, oh boy, it's going to be interesting to see how this pans out. Let's go ahead now and show you some. Model runs. We're going to show you the main operational runs and then get to the ensembles with this. Let's go ahead and start with the GFS right here. Here's the GFS that we have pulled up for you right here. GFS run has the system organizing, developing, getting down to hurricane strength before it makes landfall in Jamaica, moves off the coast of Cuba, intensifies pretty quickly as it moves through the island, makes landfall in central Cuba, moves over Havana, enters the Gulf of Mexico, is around tropical storm strength, reorganizes a little bit, but starts to weaken due to land interaction, makes landfall near the Florida Peninsula not the Florida Peninsula, the Florida Panhandle, as this trough continues to move through, and it's expected to merge with that frontal boundary and become extratropical, and that's what we'll have to pay attention to. Here's the Canadian run that we have right here, relatively broad to start with, organizes and develops real slowly, gets down to 1,001 millibar system as it makes landfall near Jamaica, moves near Cuba as a strong tropical storm, enters the Gulf of Mexico, weakens due to the cooler waters, and then eventually makes landfall near the Apalachicola Bay, according to the Canadian run. Let's go ahead and show you the NavGem. Typically don't like showing this, but I wanted to kind of throw it in the aggregate and see what it's going to do. NavGem has the system making landfall as a tropical storm in Jamaica, has the low pressure system that's currently over Puerto Rico, merging with this one, moves near Havana, Cuba, makes landfall there, heads towards Florida, makes landfall as a tropical storm, and that's generally what we will see with that. And then lastly, we have the Icon run. Icon's been pretty interesting throughout this entire case right here. We're going to have to watch it. Icon has a very broad area of development starting around 1,003 millibars to start with, and then moves near Cuba right here as around tropical storm strength, and then enters the Gulf of Mexico, weakens. It's a low pressure system, most likely expected to dissipate. It's been kind of going back and forth, which I find pretty interesting right here, so we're going to have to watch it. We're also going to go ahead and show you the first hurricane runs. I don't think they have loaded yet, unfortunately, but yeah, they have not loaded yet, unfortunately, but we can also go ahead and show you the ensemble runs with this real quickly. Let's go ahead and show you some ensembles as well, just to kind of give a general consensus. Ensembles are pretty interesting, I will say. The ensembles, the GFS at 0Z, majority of them want to either make landfall or a close pass to Jamaica, and then head towards Cuba, and then head towards Florida. Here's the 12Z run as well for context. A little bit more of a westward shift towards western Cuba, and then heading towards Florida, and we're going to have to pay close attention to it. Here's the European run right here. This is the 12Z Euro. Generally a lot weaker, but generally a lot more concentrated track-wise. Here's the 0Z as well. Once again, generally weaker, but generally more concentrated, so we're going to have to pay close attention to it. But by and large, we are seeing a relatively strong system heading towards Jamaica, Cuba, and Florida, especially for this time of hurricane season. And this will likely be the last hurrah before hurricane season dies for the season, and then we will shift to winter weather content. There will be a winter weather video coming out relatively soon, so be sure you stay tuned for that. But in the meantime, be sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you are new. It helps us out, helps us get more people engaged with weather. If you want to come hang out with us at Storms Unite, be sure to join our Discord server. Link to that in the end screen. Shout out to Daniel as an official sponsor of the Pat's Path Predictor Patreon. If you want to support the channel more directly, be sure to join it. It's the first link in the description down below. And with that being said, have a wonderful day, guys. Stay safe.